Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and their professional teams struggle to find great capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy. Using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is the best way to exit highly appreciated assets tax deferred, so you create, preserve, and grow your wealth. I'm your co-host, Pearson York, filling in for Brett Swarts, and each episode I'm joined by some of the best wealth, business, real estate, and leadership individuals in the world to share ideas, deal stories, and inspirations, so together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. As always, we're streaming on CREsecrets.com, Capital Gains Tax Solutions YouTube channel, Kingdom Luxury Realty Facebook channel, and so go please rate, review, subscribe, like, comment, share, repost, all those fun things that we do for the algorithms nowadays. And I'm super excited about our next guest. He's a guru and of SaaS models. He's got a diverse background in all different types of business and medicine, and so we are going to pick up a ton of value from him on just the ecosystem of B2B, and he's going to be a fantastic guest. So, Anthony Nitsos, how you doing?
I'm doing great. With setting the bar that high, I better make sure that I perform, right?
I agree, because I just definitely set some expectations up there.
You sure
so,
All right.
So tell me about SaaS Gurus. How'd you get involved, and maybe about your story? How'd you get there?
So if we go way back on the time machine here, I actually started off as a medical student back a long time ago, and quickly realized that was not for me. So being in Michigan, which is where I'm still based in the Ann Arbor cluster, medicine and manufacturing both shared a similar letter. So I figured, well, what do you do with a partial medical degree when you have to go find a job? So I moved into manufacturing and found out quickly that because of my systems background, the human body is a massive system, right? It's a whole bunch of interrelated systems. It was easy for me to walk into a manufacturing company and quickly grasp what was happening, and not just that, what was going wrong. So it was very quickly put into process reengineering and optimization and efficiency type of tasks and types of projects. And it was really very easy for me to do those, because I go back to the original training: find the root cause, don't treat the symptom. And that's just as relevant to business as it is to the human body. From there, I did that for a while, and then this was just before I don't know if you recall, there was this thing called Y2K. And in the year 2000, everybody thought their software is going to blow up because they didn't have dates coded correctly. So there was this big push to get ERP systems, enterprise resource planning systems, into place. And so I had already been working on getting accounting chops, because in manufacturing, it was pretty clear the guys that were in charge of the money were the ones that were making a lot of it. And it also gave you a tremendous amount of insight into the organization. I look upon accounting as like the electron microscope of business, because you can really dive deep into and understand what's going on inside of the organization. And so with that background, the ERP guys found me and said, hey, we want you to come and do ERP implementations. And so I did that for several years, leading up to Y2K. And then Y2K happened and nothing happened. And everybody had their ERP systems and they were going great, but there were no new sales because everybody had bought their ERP system. So our entire team was starting to get cut left, right, and center. And I got the call 2 days before Thanksgiving to say, hey, your services are no longer going to be needed after the end of the year. I'm like, thank you, Merry Christmas, for giving that to me before the holidays.
Yeah.
So what do? I went out, I found a job. I happened to find a job that was with a company that had just been acquired by the Japanese manufacturing company. U.S. manufacturing company had just been acquired by the Japanese. I happened to speak Japanese. I had studied over there for a while, and had gotten my chops up, and I knew the culture pretty well. And they liked that, and the fact that I had the ERP background, and they were going to scale. They said, look, we have contracts that we're going to grow 10 times our current revenue in the next 3 years. We need somebody to come in and set up all the back office systems and make sure that we don't, fumble on our own, 1 yard line. So my mission was to come in. That was my first job as an accountant. I'd never had a job as an accountant before. I was a controller of a Japanese company, starting day one, going, what does a controller do? So learned really fast what that was all about. But within the Japanese organization, everything is about customers and quality. We all know this, right? Because we've heard the stories well enough. And so I got deeply into the figuring out how to scale an organization as efficiently as possible, because I was told point blank, you are not allowed to add headcount to the back office when you do this. We're going to grow 10 times and you're going to have to keep your team of 3 in the back office. That's all you're going to get. So I said, all right, I will take that challenge on if I have complete responsibility and total control of every electron and piece of data in the organization that doesn't run a manufacturing site. And they said, okay, it's yours. So I did it. Within a year, we had put in an ERP system. Back then, state of the art was barcodes and scans and EDI. We had everything automated so that when we reached 50 million in recurring revenue, I had the same 3 people. All the financial reports were coming to us. We had everything dialed in. I had very little to actually do. So, next job, what do you do? Well, accounting was fun. ERP was fun. Manufacturing was fun. Medicine wasn't so fun. The people in finance, those are the ones that really have actually more fun, because accounting is great if you want to look at what's happened and if you're focused on the past. But if you're looking to the future, that's finance. If you're looking at funding sources, if you're looking at how to use your cash, you're looking at projections, you're looking, in this case now, rounds, investment rounds, et cetera. So I went overseas and got a degree from the University of St. Andrews, which was great because all my friends over there are Scots, and came back here. And that's when I got into really the heavy duty fractional working for myself CFO business. Got my first SaaS client in 2007 before anybody even really knew what the term meant, and have been running ever since. I did take 2 salary jobs during that period, and both of them were to work for unicorns that exited at 2.5 billion and 1.5 billion. So during that period of time, that one unicorn we scaled from 10 million to 150 million in 3 years. And the other one, we had been acquired by PE and they needed to be cleaned up and prepped up for sale. Once those gigs were done, I'm like, you know what? Salaries, not so fun. I like being my own boss. Went back in, founded the company that I'm running right now, which is SaaS Gurus, specifically working for B2B SaaS companies in the private equity backed and VC backed space, usually post revenue on up to about the B round of investment, at which point they hire their full-time CFOs.
See, guys, I told you he was a guru. It doesn't disappoint over there. Way to deliver on that. So breadth of experience and knowledge, a lot of wisdom. What are 1 or 2 gifts that you think that you've got that have let you to be as successful as you are today?
One is making finance and accounting accessible. I think that there's way too much, oh, this is rocket science, or gee, I don't get GAAP, or, those metrics are kind of confusing. In the end, we are talking about stuff that's actually quite easily understandable as long as you put it into terms that people can understand. So the first thing that I think I really, pride myself on is the ability to sit down and say, look, these are the numbers that you want to look at. Here's where they come from. Here's how we're going to use them. And here's how you're going to talk about them when you talk to investors or your board, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm primarily right down inside. I love to educate. I love to teach. And so, when we go into an engagement, I'm going in not with the idea that, hey, this is a great project and we're just going to continue to, rake in the retainer. I want to see light bulbs go off. I want to see people come in and say, wow, I had no idea that was what was going on in my company because of what we did. So 1 is making finance and accounting accessible, but 2, more important, making it truly forward-looking and anticipatory, because this is a world where everything is changing constantly, and it's only getting worse and going faster. Right now on the horizon, AI is coming. How is that going to impact accounting and finance? It's going to impact accounting and finance. How do we anticipate that? But for my clients, what's going on in your space? What do you see? What's going on? How do we anticipate those things? That forward-lookingness attitude, I think I bring into everything. It's like I'm always planning for what's going to happen next. I'm not looking behind me too much at what's already gone on, because that's water under the bridge. That's done.
Yeah. So really, you have vision for where things are going, but then you anticipate those. And it sounds like you're really good at putting them into, or putting solutions into place. There's a book called Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman, and he talks about the visionary and the implementer. It sounds like really, you are an implementer, somebody who can actually get in there and actually implement the system to make things happen. You're the one who actually really brings the visions to life behind the scenes. Is that
I call myself the strategic enabler. Right. You have an idea, you have a company. What you don't need to be doing is choking on your own success or having stuff get in your way. Right. If you're a CEO of a SaaS company, there are two things that you need to be focused on: sales and cash. That's it. Right. It's all about recurring revenue, ARR, annual recurring revenue. It's like, how much recurring revenue do we have? How fast is it growing? That's absolutely number one. That's what most of your valuation is going to be based on, bar none. Number two, you cannot spend net income. I don't care what your GAAP financial statements say. Do you have the cash to run the company and pay your payroll and pay your vendors? That is by far the most important thing. Do we have enough cash to get to the next round? And from there, do we have enough cash to get to the next round? So one of the things that I find, which is kind of frustrating for me, is when I come into a company, usually we have to clean things up because somebody has been in there and they've been doing some good job on the books, but it's not helping the company run. It's not giving the CEO, the founder, and the executive team what they need to actually run the company. And that's why forward-looking financial statements, especially the cash forecast, is something that we really focus on and really train our CEOs and founder clients to really focus on with us. Is like, look, you don't want to run out of gas in the middle of the desert, right? You need to get through the desert to the other side so that you can collect either the paycheck for your exit or the next round so that you can grow even faster.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you mentioned that you helped a couple companies exit for pretty high valuations. Did you have anything to do with the tax consequences, and how did you kind of navigate those situations?
I'm sorry, I am not a tax guy. Okay, so I know when I found out I was going to be on your show, I said, "Wait a minute, it's all about tax. Are you sure I should be on this program?" I know enough to be dangerous, right? Which is, to basically, but what I'm focused on is maximizing the valuation of the company, right? Because in the end, however the tax treatment falls out, you have to have cash receipts to come in order to worry about it. So I look at it from a very basic perspective, which is, how do I help you maximize the valuation of this company? And it can come in a number of ways. One of the ways that it comes in most clearly to me is how you structure your contracts. A lot of SaaS companies will go out there and say, "Hey, we need to have an upfront implementation cost in addition to our recurring revenue." And I'll go, "No, you don't." Do you know what the multiple is on services? Just off the top of your head?
No, 3.
1, 2, maybe 3 if you're really lucky. What's
Yep.
the multiple on recurring revenue?
10.
10, 15, 20. You can do the math as easily as I do. If 25% or 50% of your revenue is coming from implementation services and the rest of it's coming from ARR, you're screwing yourself. Done. Plainly, you're screwing yourself. Okay? Because what you should be doing is figuring out 3 things. 1, how do I make my product stand up on its own so that I don't have to have implementation costs? Number 2, how do I make my product bulletproof so that I don't have a support team that has to constantly chase bugs and deal with customers who either don't understand the product or the product doesn't work? And number 3, how do I take the cost of that implementation and roll it into my recurring revenue number? Because let's say it costs you $15,000 to implement, just throw a number out there, and your average sales price is $10,000, right? Your recurring revenue is $10,000. Well, based on that one, your multiple on your recurring revenue, let's say it's 100,000, we'll use 10. And your valuation is 100,000. And your $15,000 worth of implementation is worth nothing, maybe 15,000. So you have $115,000 valuation. What if I were to say, "Hey, what's your average life expectancy of your customer? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Why don't you take that 15,000 and instead of charging 15,000 up front and 10,000 a year, why don't you just charge them 15,000 a year?" Now the valuation is 150 out of the gate before you haven't even changed anything. All you did was change the contract and the terms. You still have the implementation team, they're still there. Now the focus will be on your gross margin, right?
So let me dive into that really quick. So if you can change your reoccurring revenue,
yep.
Okay. I mean, that basically adds $15,000 of cost every single year to that client.
Yes, it does. Or 5,000, right? So you're looking at it saying, okay, I could charge them 15,000 up front, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of the software company, not necessarily the client, right?
Okay.
If the product is there and the value prop is there, maybe 10,000 to 5,000 isn't the right, but the number, if they really need that product and you can really demonstrate the value prop to them, they're going to buy it. Okay. And you probably have more room to have higher recurring revenue than you do to have higher implementations. And again, I'm going to come back to your services revenue. When you go in front of an investor and you're looking to set a pre-money valuation, they're going to look at your services and say, that's nice. Show me your ARR. Right?
Yeah. Okay. So basically what you're saying is if you can change the contract to, instead of it being one lump sum, $15,000 or whatever, a one-time implementation fee, if you can basically amortize that out as reoccurring revenue, then now you've just totally increased the value of your business exponentially.
Yeah. Where it's going to hurt you, maybe hurt you, is that I'm not getting that cash up front to cover my costs. Well, SaaS should be paid in advance 1 year. So you can get that 15,000 paid up front. Don't do monthly, do annual, especially if you're in B2B. B2B should be annual paid in advance. Always end of story. That's the gold standard. So I look at it and say, and this is, we're going to go in and we're going to work this into the cash forecast, right? Because the first thing I'm going to take a look at is, all right, can you actually afford to do this cash wise? I don't want to do something that's stupid. But at the same time, I'm going to push to say, look, you need to get away from these big upfront fees and charge recurring revenue, because exactly what you just did. Amortize it over the expected life of the customer, or maybe amortize it over the first 3 years. Pick an amortization period that makes sense.
Right.
But build it into your ARR.
Right.
And you will increase the value of your company just with that simple change. I have done this with, I don't know how many clients I've lost track of. And because they're like, oh, we got to do this. I'm like, no, you don't. This is what you have to do. And once I explain it to him and show him to him, and it's, again, this is not rocket science, right? It's just like, look, here it is. Simple. 10 times this, 1 times that. Which one do you want to have more of?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So those are just that's one little tweak that you make. And that's just an example of what you're talking about when you're saying like the value comes in the contracts. And I'm kind of bringing this back, full circle, because my initial question was like, how did you help with the tax, implementations after you help these companies get to that point and sell it? You already said that you aren't involved in that particular situation, so I won't dive into that. But I do want to go ahead and just kind of pivot off of that a little bit. When you are looking to do a liquidation, right? Are these conversations that you're having with people up front, or how are you guys in this restructuring or this contract structuring? That's something that you're doing before you're even considering selling, right?
Yeah. There are a lot of things that I'm prepping my clients for. Okay, everybody, let's face it, most of the time, I'm not going to say all the time, maybe 80% of the time, my clients are looking for an exit, right?
Okay.
They're not building this company as a lifestyle income. They're not looking at it as their job for the next 10 years. They're saying, I want to grow this and then I want to exit and get a paycheck. Great. Awesome. How do we make that paycheck as big as possible? There are really a few ways in which the CFO can come in and add value. And that's really the role of the CFO, is to add valuation to the companies, to increase the company's valuation. If the CFO is not doing that, they're not a CFO, in my opinion. It's like you go to a doctor to get cured or get treated. You don't go to the doctor to have them keep you coming back over and over and over again, right? Those are not That's not what you want. You want a doctor to fix you. When I blew my ACL out, I said, I want a new one. Okay. I didn't say I want to go on crutches for the rest of my life and have to take painkillers. Right. So when I go in, I say, look, you want an exit. When do you want an exit? At what valuation do you want to exit at? Right. It's like some people they're fine with 10 million. Other people, they want $1 billion. Right. It just really depends on their personality and their goals and their personal desires. Whatever that is, we then go in and say, okay, how do I maximize that? One, maximizing ARR. Number one, are we getting every single dollar of ARR that we can get? Number two, is your retention and renewal team up to snuff? Because it doesn't matter how fast your ARR is growing if you're losing it out the back end because you're not keeping customers. And this is something that a lot of companies don't think about right up front. It's like, look, what's your renewal process look like? What is what I call the retention and renewal? How do you retain the customer? How do you nurture them so that they don't even think about going somewhere else? Right. So getting them feeling loved, feeling them contacted, giving them content, giving them useful cases, whatever it is that you're in. How do you make sure that you're nurturing that client, not just from the time that you get them in the door, but for their entire life? Most life expectancy in SaaS is usually around 3 years. Most of my clients are achieving 5 to 8. And they're doing it because they're listening about, hey, we really need to retain those customers because the hard part's getting them in the door. It's easy to keep them once they're there if you do it right, right? How many times have you gotten into a service organization or whatnot, and they just treated you like crap, okay? Once you were in there, it's like, yeah, I got your money. So now, the first opportunity you can find a bolt, you're gone, okay?
Right.
You don't want that happening. You want those customers to love you. Not only, you don't want satisfied customers, you want delighted customers. A satisfied customer doesn't go out and evangelize about you. A delighted customer will go out and brag to everybody that they know. Hey, look at this great company I have, right? Now your word of mouth grows. So there's a lot of value in protecting what's called NRR, net retained revenue or net recurring revenue, which is the revenue off of your existing customer base. Are you keeping them in the door and are you growing them? That's a key metric that you're going to be having to present when you're exiting. It's not just your ARR, it's also what's now being called NRR. We used to call it net dollar retention, but now it's called net retained revenue or whatever you want to call it.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's another way. And if I may, there's a third level.
Sure.
We need to understand exactly where all the costs in the organization are going and what they're being spent on, and that there's no waste. This now is going to put on my Japanese hat, right? The masters of efficiency. Every little single piece of manufacturing scrap is considered a mortal sin, right? You want no scrap. You want nothing left on the manufacturing floor. The same thing applies in SaaS. I don't care. You want to make sure that every dollar that's going into your organization is being spent exactly where it needs to be spent. I can't tell you how many times I go in, and the first thing we do is we clean up the accounting system. We put a budget together, and they're like, oh, crap, I had no idea we were spending so much on that. Oh, yeah, well, let's figure out a way to spend less on that. So the CFO adds value in terms of making sure your contracts are structured properly, making sure that your net retained revenue is protected. But more important, but just as important is, are you keeping the cash in the door that you got and not wasting it? Because that efficiency also will help impress you in front of your investors. Say, oh, these guys are really capital efficient. And there's a metric out there, it's called capital efficiency. How many millions of dollars did it take you to get to $1 million in ARR, or 100 million or 10 million? You want a capital efficiency that's at least, that's no more than 2.5, in my opinion. So if I put in 2.5 million to get to $1 million in ARR, I'm doing pretty good. That $2.5 billion exit I talked to you about, their capital efficiency was 0.125.
Wow. That's pretty low.
That's insane. That's why they were able to exit for $2.5 billion.
So let me ask you, let me ask you this then. In the capital efficiency world, is it something where it's like, okay, like you could totally suck in the beginning, right? But then we bring someone like, Anthony into our business and he flips things around, and now our capital efficiency, let's say it was like 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Three for $1 million. $3 million for $1 million kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
4 million, maybe 5. I don't know. I don't know what sucks, but that sounds like it's not as good, right? And then you come in and you bring it down to 1 for 1 or a half for 1. Does that carry forward as like, oh, okay, we fixed it, and so like, or is it like you screwed your capital efficiency, like it's done?
No, you can recover. It's certainly
Okay.
recoverable, right? So, I mean, there's always going to be this jump forward fallback, I call it. It's like, okay, we're going to bring in our cash now because we need to grow. Well, now, right today, let's say I'm at 100,000 in ARR. Let's start a small company, right? I'm bringing $1.5 million or $2.5 million, post seed runner or seed extension round, right? Well, that's not a great capital efficiency, 2.5 million to 100,000. But if I take that 2.5 million and I grow that 100,000 to $1 million, now my capital efficiency looks good.
Yeah.
If I'm able to grow that million ARR in such a way that the cash coming in from that, because it's all paid in advance annual, allows me to use that cash flow from the revenue to run my company, and I don't have to go out and raise more, then you're now in that sweet spot. So
Gotcha.
if you have a lot of deal flow coming in and you're doing it monthly or you're doing implementation services, that's where you're killing your capital efficiency, because what you really want to do is you want to bring all that money in up front. That's why those annual contracts are so important. Annual paid in advance. PIA does not mean paid in the you-know-what, okay? It means paid in advance. You want those PIA contracts because that brings in all of that up front. So it keeps you from having to go out to the investor community and get more cash. I had a situation occur where the financial model had an incorrect assumption. The incorrect assumption was that large enterprise customers, in this particular case, were going to pay in advance for a year. Well, it turns out they didn't want to do that. They would only pay monthly. So the forecast, which had been cash forecast, which had been built on the assumption that, let's say your average sales price was 150,000. Instead of us getting 150,000 30 days later after invoice, we're going to have to spread that out to, whatever 150 divided by 12 is. I can't do that in my head. Over time, huge cash swing.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, you got to go back to the investors and you have to go back to the board and say, oops. You don't want to be in that kind of position. That's where making sure that your forecast model of your cash is airtight.
Yeah.
Because that impacts everything.
Interesting. Okay. And you said that most of your clients are looking for exits. They bring you in to basically say, hey, look, like we want to square ourselves up. So when we're ready to exit, we're good to go. And we're getting the highest valuation possible.
Yeah. It could be 2 or 3 years down the line. Very rarely do they bring me in to say, hey, we're going to exit in 6 months or we're preparing. I do have a few that want somebody to come in and clean things up and make sure they're ready for, an exit in a year and a half. But you have to get to a certain revenue level, which means that your go-to-market strategy has to be solid.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that you have a clear sales plan. This is the other place where a lot of companies fall down flat on their faces. Like, yeah, we're going to go to 2.5 million. Okay, how are you going to get there? Tell me exactly how you're going to get there. Who's your ideal customer profile? Where are their watering holes? What do they like to hear? How are you going to get them? Once you get them in, the door, how are you going to bag them? And then how are you going to keep them? Until you figure that particular DNA sequence out, it's all wishful thinking.
Interesting. Okay. So I want to share something with you since I got you on here, and since you have a lot of companies that are exiting and whatnot. It is a little tax trick, but I think you might find it valuable. So one of the things that we do out here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions is we help companies defer capital gains tax. It works for real estate, of course, but it also works for businesses. It works for stock. It works for crypto. It works for highly appreciated art. It doesn't matter. And what's unique about it is, I don't know if you've ever done a 1031 exchange or anything like that, but
I know what it is.
Yeah. So with a 1031, there's some problems with it. Number one, you can't do it if you're a business. It's only really for real estate. And you have 45 days to identify, and you got to go back into real estate. Well, with this, you can sell a property or a business or a stock or whatever, and you can diversify. You can defer all the tax, and you can go in and out of different investments on your timing when it makes sense to you. So these companies that, have these, $1 billion exits, right? Their tax bills are really high, a couple, 200 million sometimes, on certain sales and whatnot. But with this, since you've got these planning kind of going in like so early, then, you might be able to offer that as like, hey, all of this is really good to get a super high evaluation, but like you've been talking about, right? How do you keep what you sold, right? Instead of giving 20 to 30%, 40% to the government. So there's it's a unique strategy, and you guys can learn more about that strategy by going to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. And we have a mastermind every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And come bring your friends and ask questions and financial advisors and all that kind of stuff. But super powerful, super unique strategy, gives timing, control, asset allocation, liquidity. So when you're ready to find and go back into other deals, you totally can. It's cool. An awesome strategy. Yeah, you guys can check it out at capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. So Anthony, where can people find you?
I am easy to find. Number one, I have a unique last name, Nitsos. There are very few of us out there in the world. Nitsos. If you put Anthony Nitsos in there, you're going to find probably me. So Google search is easy to turn me up. www.gurus-gurus.com. That's my website. There's a contact us right there. Send us an email. We'll get right back to you. LinkedIn. Easy. I'm all over the place. I put podcasts out. I put content out. There's a lot of free content on my website. You can go in and learn. I believe in freedom of information when it comes to what I do. I don't believe that what I do is rocket science, and I think it should be accessible to everybody. So I put videos out there with articles that I think are very clearly explaining, hey, here's how you do it. Not just what to do. There's a lot of companies out there that say this is what you need to do, but they don't explain how. And that's where I think we differentiate ourselves, is that we tell you exactly how to do it. It's like, here's the nuts and bolts. Here's how you put the machine together. So those are the three easiest ways to find me. Google search, my name, find me on my website, or LinkedIn.
Awesome. So yeah, guys, sasgurus.com. You can catch Anthony there, or just Google him. So that's awesome. Okay. I know we're running out of time here, so I want to get you into the lightning round real quick, and then we'll get you off here. I'm kind of throwing a curveball at you. The lightning round. I know.
All right. Let me get my lightning rod.
What's your favorite book?
Dune. As in Frank Herbert's Dune, as in the movie that came out recently. Dune.
Are they going to make a second movie?
I don't know. I haven't seen the first one yet. I have kids. I didn't have any chance to go see a bloody movie. Who knows?
That's fair. I watched it on the airplane. So if you fly anywhere there, it's on Southwest.
All I can say is the first two movies sucked. So I hope they did a better job on this one.
Oh yeah. I don't know. We'll see. It was pretty, I've never heard of it before. So that's interesting. Okay. What's your favorite leadership quote?
God, you got me on that one. My favorite leadership quote. Integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one's around to notice.
Nice. Awesome. What are you most curious about right now?
Artificial intelligence.
Okay. And if robots are going to take over the world?
Well, it's not so much robots taking over the world, but when you take a look at the kinds of things that can be AI'd out of it, basically replacing people with AI, there's a lot. And so this is something that's a tidal wave. And frankly, I'd rather be on top of that tidal wave than on the shoreline looking at it coming at me.
Yeah, totally fair. Drive your boat over it. I think it's like the best way over a tidal wave.
Or run like hell to the hills, right?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, awesome. So, guys, reach out to Anthony. Anthony Nitsos. Google him, or sasgurus.com, and check out capitalgainstaxsolutions.com for more information on the Deferred Sales Trust. Any parting words?
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Love being on your show.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And thanks everybody for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and their professional teams struggle with finding great capital gains tax deferral options. And using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way to exit your highly appreciated assets tax deferred, so you create, preserve, and grow your wealth. Sell your businesses for $2.5 million or $2.5 billion and save a bunch of money. Preserve that wealth. Please rate, review, subscribe, like, comment, share, post. Do all that fun stuff. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good one. Thanks, Anthony.